Are you ready, Butters? Are you ready for some? Oh, thank you. Hello, everybody. How to Write Romantasy is available for pre-order right now, and you have the option to receive a free digital workbook that will help you craft a power couple, throuple, or polycule that readers will devour. All the details are in the description. Get on it. On to today's topic. In honor of the upcoming release of How to Write Romantasy, I am talking with romantasy authors to learn more about the craft and how they achieved their success. And today we're talking with Morgan Gauthier, the author of A Song of Shadow and Starlight. Morgan Gauthier graduated from Louisiana State University with a BA in theater and writes fierce romantasy featuring flawed characters with whimsical worlds. She currently lives in East Tennessee with her husband, 3 children, and 3 dogs. You hear that? 3 doggies. When she's not reading or writing, Morgan enjoys playing disc golf, tending to her garden, drinking lots of coffee, and binge-watching shows with a big, cozy blanket. Morgan is here today to talk about a very important aspect of romantasy, world building. World building is the process of creating an imaginary world. It's most common in speculative fiction, particularly sci-fi, dystopian, post-apocalyptic, and of course, fantasy. I've spoken in depth about my world building process in past videos. I also talk about my process in Shut Up and Write the Book, as well as How to Write Romantasy. But all writers are different. It always helps to hear from multiple experts about what they think works best. That way you get a well-rounded view of your options. Morgan is all about rich, evocative world building, so we're here to learn from her about how she gets the job done. Morgan, thank you so much for hopping on the channel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to start with the most complicated question to answer. What is your personal world building process?
Okay, so I'm a very visual person. When I have a world kind of forming in my head, I like to draw out my own maps. They don't always stay that way, but I really do go through the process of figuring out what kingdom has what kind of territory or like terrain, what their agriculture looks like, what their trade looks like. And some of it may never end up in the book, but at least for me, in my background research of the world, I have that. I'm a map girl anyway, so I love a good map inside my book. So once I've gotten through my hundreds of horrible sketches, I tend to give it to somebody else to make it pretty. But I also utilize Pinterest a lot. And I also do a lot of deep diving into architecture. So I'll do a lot of research into different types of architecture, different types of countries and what their buildings look like, what their land looks like. So for somebody like me who has to see it to be able to really formulate it in my head to then transfer it to paper, that's been really helpful for me.
I love that. I'm kind of the same way. I need to be able to see it. For my most recent book, The Savior's Army, they travel to a lot of different realms, and the first thing I did was make a really map. but at least I could see it. Someone else would clean it up and make it pretty, so I can definitely relate. But I'm the same way. It just helps to have it all laid out in front of you.
Absolutely. We write the words, we don't necessarily draw the maps.
Right, exactly. So the biggest hurdle world builders struggle with is world building disease, which is when they spend years fine-tuning their world rather than writing the book. What is your advice for avoiding or recovering from world building disease?
Okay, so I did this my first trilogy. I spent so much time trying to build the world, their government systems, their economics, like all of that. And I was failing to actually write the story itself. And as I started to write the story, things in the world started to change. I wouldn't be married so much to the world building. I would do your basics, your foundation, and then as you write, build from there. It's so easy to get caught up in making the excuse, because sometimes I do this of like, I have to get this done before I'm able to actually write it. But until you actually write it, you won't know what that world truly looks like. Because even in my rough drafts, things have changed. I realized that something different would suit the kingdom better than what I would originally have in my notes. And if you're just married to it, it's not going to be the best it can be. So I would say be fluid in how you're building your world, but make sure it's just the foundation. That's just the first piece.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And that's something that a lot of people forget is you could just build this entire world. You could spend years doing it. But once you start writing the story, you're going to realize certain aspects that you created no longer fit. Things always change while you're writing the book, no matter how much you plan. I'm a hardcore planner. I write really detailed outlines, but I've never 100% stuck to an outline. You have to allow room for change. And if you spend all this time building a world only to change things during the draft, you kind of realize, oh, that was sort of a waste of time. I could have just, I could have kept it a little bit simpler and built as I went. So I absolutely couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and it's easy to fall into that pitfall because you want it to be perfect, but there's no such thing when you're creating. So
exactly. And that's another thing is it's like perfection. Well, first of all, writing is subjective. So one person may love a book, another person may hate it, but there's just no perfection when it comes to writing books. So there's no point in chasing that. So a lot of writers struggle with info dumping, especially when it comes to world building. What are your tips for seamlessly weaving the world into the plot beats and story?
This is something that I have actually gotten a lot better with. So with my first trilogy, thankfully I didn't publish that first go around of that first book. I remember reading out loud to my husband. We got to like chapter, I think 8, and he was like, I don't want to be like rude, but this is slow. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I'm kind of bored. Nothing's really happened. It's just a lot of information. And I was so mad. I was like, what do you mean? I took forever to write this. What do you mean? But then when I sat back and I thought about it, I was like, he's right. It is just a lot of info dumping. I went back to the drawing board. I'm like, how can I make this interesting? And then it hit me. It's like, it's almost like a movie. What's going to hook your reader within the first couple paragraphs, the first chapter? The first page is critical. And if you can't capture their attention and like draw them in, they're not going to stay. What's important right now in the world that needs to be mentioned to propel the story forward? If it's not moving the story forward, it's probably not needed. I decided to start doing that in my writing, and it's become something I've really gotten good at. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from readers about it. Am I perfect? No, but I'm much better at my world building now. And it's something that it's a lot easier for me to do now because I've been practicing it. So I would say the biggest tip is, does this move the story forward? If it bogs it down, if it slows your pacing, if it just seems out of place and it's like, if I just took it away, it wouldn't change the story, then it's probably not necessary.
I could not agree more. You are my hero right now. Because this is something that a lot of people just like, they don't get. They're like, but I spent so much time building the irrigation system. And it's like, that's great. That might have been helpful for you. But your readers don't give a shit about the irrigation system unless it's somehow related to the plot.
You can leave those Easter eggs. If the irrigation is huge later on, maybe you drop a sentence or they make a comment about the irrigation system. And then later on, they're like,
oh, no wonder they mentioned this before. Like, now I get it.
Maybe something quick, but definitely don't bog it down.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Like I said, you are my hero because this is something so many people struggle with. And I think especially fantasy and maybe like sci-fi writers, we all struggle with this at some point, but a lot of people just stick to it and they're like, no, this is important. It's like, is it?
It goes back to also like kill your darlings. And it's hard for us to do that because sometimes, I mean, when we say kill your darlings, we're thinking like certain scenes or certain characters that don't need to be there, whatever. But it relates to world building too. Like, yeah, you've spent a lot of time and a lot of research. A book that I just finished writing that's on submission with my agent right now, I did so much research into architecture, into the Venetian Renaissance time period, just to have a couple paragraphs about what this character is seeing. And then that's it. And I'm just like, wow, I did all that research, days, hours of my time, and it's only this much, woven throughout, but like at a time, you weave it through. But if I bog the story down with all my research, like it's a paper, everyone would put it down. Again, if it's not propelling forward, it's probably cuttable.
So a lot of fantasy worlds are inspired by medieval Europe, which can make these stories look kind of similar to one another. What are some of your tips for keeping your world building creative and unique?
Well, I'm personally a really big history buff. When I was going to go to college, I actually was going to be going for anthropology and archaeology. And then life took a turn because here I am. But like just the study of people and ancient cultures and like how they built things. Why did they build things? It's really cool to dive into different civilizations or different people, even now with people in their architecture and different countries, like researching the world that you're living in. It's so cool to see the differences, like what was influencing them at the time. For my Song of Shadow and Starlight, I have some that has more of a medieval Europe dystopian vibe in the kingdoms. I have a place called Trinovia, and it's like Amsterdam meets like Budapest, Hungary. So you've got like
that's cool.
all the beautiful row houses and the winding canals and the forests and all that. But then I do have a world called Bava, and it's heavily influenced by Aztec like architecture and
that.
jungles and it's bright and it's lively and it's loud and it's hot and humid. And then we have another world, it's called Hydra. We haven't gone there yet, but we will in book 3, and it is based on like Atlantis meets like half above the water, half below the water. So like it can be a mixed thing. I love fusing ancient civilizations with even some modern cultures. Really, honestly, it's just as much as you can dream up, basically, you can make it happen. It doesn't have to be cookie cutter. It can really be this fusion of flavor, if you will. There's no wrong in fantasy. You can make it whatever you want it to look like.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to have that vision, because you have to make sure it is believable when you write it down.
I love that. And I love that you mentioned play, because I feel like a lot of people, and this is something that I'm constantly saying, is it's like, we're just writing stories. We're essentially playing make-believe on paper. It's not that deep. Just have fun. That's the whole point of this. Have fun with it. I think a lot of people feel like they have to do medieval Europe for fantasy, and it can absolutely be great, but there's no rule saying that. You can base it on, whatever you want. And I love, all of the different influence that you have for your worlds. That's fantastic.
Another thing with the play, it's almost like childlike wonder, because Bava, the Aztec inspired kingdom, I'd already figured it was like jungly and hot and humid, but I was like, I feel like it's missing something. It needs to be dangerous in a way. Not that jungles aren't dangerous, but like I needed that element. And my son was really into the floor is lava, and he was like, Mom, come play floor is lava with me. And he was like really jumping couch cushion to couch cushion. I'm jumping with him, almost bust my ass. And then all of a sudden I was like, it hit me. I was like, what if they have this underground lava arena and it's life or death? It's like the Roman Colosseum on an island surrounded by lava. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like so cool. You're just playing with different things, and it might work and it might not. But if you just give yourself the permission, anything is possible. That's when things really start to click, and it's really fun to put together.
I couldn't agree more. Like I said, a lot of people forget that this is supposed to be fun. And I feel like it's also because we're adults, so some of us have had our like wings clipped a little bit. And so we've kind of lost that childlike imagination. And I'm always telling writers, like, go back to that. Go back to being a little kid where anything's possible. Come up with ideas, even if they're stupid. Just write every idea you have down. And if it sucks, you can delete it. It's not a big deal. There's a backspace button. It's not the end of the world. Just allow yourself to just dream up whatever, and then you keep the good stuff and you get rid of the stuff. It's not that deep. So sometimes world building draws heavily from our real world and real world biases. What are some tips for creating a fantasy world without regurgitating stereotypes?
I mean, I think it also comes down to like your experiences, right? Your point of view. For me, I write characters who are biracial. There are a lot of diverse characters because I'm biracial. My experience is going to be different from your experience, different from another person's experience. So I think that's the beauty of bringing in the modern with your fantasy, because it's a representation. It represents like you as an author. It's your voice. It's your unique story coming together in this fantasy realm. Things that we struggle with personally, or we see in the world that's like an injustice. So we'd want to see an ideal world. That's what we put into our books, or the hardships that we've gone through, that we've faced, or we see our friends face, or whatever it could be. Like, you put that into it because it's like you're addressing the modern problems, but you're dressing it up in a fantasy. I think that that's a really powerful tool that you can connect with readers. My goal when I have somebody pick up my book is that they can relate to someone, but then also walk away with having learned something, not being preachy by any means, but having that feeling of, I feel seen, or I feel heard, or, hey, I could probably do better. I think it's a really good marriage of taking your unique perspective and putting it into a fantasy realm and just sharing that with people so that you can reach people in that way. That's what I would say.
There's a lot of power in not necessarily like self-insert, but using your experiences to fuel your story, and writing from a point of view that like you kind of get and understand. And, you know, there will be a lot of people out there who are like, oh, I finally feel seen. I finally feel like I am seeing myself in this story, or I can relate.
Yeah.
Or like you said, you know, people feeling like, oh, I realize I've been getting this all wrong and I've been looking at things the wrong way. And this has kind of taught me something. So I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. Do you have any projects in the works, and where can everyone find you online?
My handle on everything from Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, I'm at author Morgan Gauthier, so easy to find me everywhere. I have a book on submission through my agent. I was picked up in 2024 in September by my agent Cole at the Seymour Agency, and we are officially on submission.
That's so exciting.
I know, fingers crossed that goes well. That's my 8th written book, but I'm working on the 3rd book in the Shadow and Starlight series, and that's supposed to be coming out late 2025. I will be doing a whole bunch of signings later this year. I'll be at Villains and Vixens in Dallas. I'll be at romantasy in Orlando, and Tennessee LitCon in Kingsport, Tennessee. And then next year I've got a whole bunch, so you can see me at a Polycon, Imaginarium, and all those good things. So I'll be around. So if you want some signed copies, come see me. I have some surprises in the work as far as the Shadow and Starlight series goes. I'm just a mom trucking along in life. That's where I'm at.
We love to see it. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was super insightful, and you're just amazing. And I can't wait to see all of your upcoming projects.
Thank you so much. I've had so much fun talking. World building is one of my favorite things. It used to be one thing that I absolutely despised, and I have this newfound love of it. And I think once you get into the groove, you'll learn to really enjoy it and have fun. So I hope that people watch this, find that joy, because it's a lot of fun. It's very playful. So I'm glad that I was able to come and chat with you about that.
Awesome. Absolutely. So that's all I got for you today. How to Write Romantasy comes out in October, so if you're trying to write your very own fantasy romance novel, pre-order it today. Even better, if you pre-order, you can receive a bonus digital workbook. All you have to do is submit your proof of pre-order. I've got the details in the description below. You can also check out my first writing craft book, Shut Up and Write the Book, or you can check out the first 2 books in my award-winning romantasy series, The Savior's Champion and The Savior's Sister. They're linked below, and you want to get on the hype soon because the Savior's Army is on its way. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I post new videos on Wednesdays and I host live streams on Mondays. And if you want to be alerted as soon as I upload, ring that bell. Bye! Have you subscribed to my channel yet? I mean, you totally should. I post new videos on Wednesdays. I also host live streams on Mondays, and they're super fun. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel and be sure to ring that bell. That way you're alerted as soon as I post new content.